There you are. I kept the light on for you. It is time for chapter 69. The sea takes people. This is one of the oldest and most painful truths of coastal life. It takes them completely and finally and without negotiation. And those left behind must find a way to live with an absence that has no body to bury, no grave to visit, no clear moment of ending to grieve from, simply a person who went out one morning and did not come back. Most families of those lost at sea eventually find a way to carry this, to build their lives around the shape of the absence, to accept what the sea has taken as taken. But occasionally, in the fishing villages along Japan's coast, a story is told quietly among those who understand such things, of someone the sea sent back, briefly, for one final visit, to say the thing that was left unsaid. Shakkoi, those visits, I have been told, cold in a way that the living find difficult to describe afterward, but welcome, always welcome. A woman lived alone in a small house in a coastal fishing village. Her husband had been lost at sea 3 months earlier. A sudden storm. His boat found. No body recovered. She had gone through the practical stages of loss with the quiet determination of someone who has no choice but to continue. The fishing community around her had been kind. She was not entirely alone in her grief, but the nights were long, and the house had a quality of absence that daylight could not entirely address. She had been asleep for several hours when something woke her. Not a sound, simply an awareness that something had changed in the house. She lay still for a moment, then got up and went to the kitchen. Her husband was sitting at the table. She stood in the kitchen doorway and looked at him. He was wet, his clothes carrying the particular heaviness of fabric that has been in the sea, his hair flat against his head, his hands on the table in front of him. Still, he looked up when she appeared in the doorway, said her name, quietly, in the particular way he had always said it. She stood in the doorway for a moment longer. Then she went to the stove and put the kettle on. She was not sure why, simply that it was what she would have done if he had come home late on any other night, wet from the sea. Sitting quietly at the kitchen table, she made tea, set a cup in front of him, sat down across from him, and they looked at each other in the quiet of the kitchen. If these stories find their way to you, if you feel drawn back to this quiet room again and again, there is a place for you here. Others have found it. Perhaps you will tell them you did too. They sat together for a long time without speaking. She told me later that this had not felt strange, that the silence between them had always been comfortable, that they had been the kind of couple who did not require conversation to be at ease with each other. She looked at him carefully in the low light of the kitchen. He looked back at her, present, entirely himself, with the same quality of attention he had always brought to looking at her, as though she was still the most interesting thing in whatever room he was in. She reached across the table and placed her hand over his. It was cold. "Shakkoi," she said to me when she described this moment. The word she used, cold in the way of something that has been in deep water for a long time. But she left her hand where it was, and he looked down at it, and did not move his hand away. Sometime in the early hours he spoke. Not much, a few sentences. He told her one thing she needed to know, something practical, something she had been worrying about since his disappearance, a matter she had not known how to resolve without him. He explained it clearly and simply in the way he had always explained practical things. She listened carefully and asked one question. He answered it. Then they sat in silence again for a while. She refilled her own tea. His cup remained untouched. She noticed this but said nothing, simply sat with him in the kitchen while the night moved toward morning. And at some point, in the gray hour before dawn, she became aware that the chair across from her was empty. She had not seen him leave, had not heard any movement. He was simply gone, as completely and finally as the sea had taken him 3 months before. She sat alone in the kitchen until the sun came up, the cup she had made for him still on the table, full, untouched. She picked it up, cold in the way of tea that has never been warmed by any hands around it. She poured it away, washed both cups, dried them, put them back in the cupboard. Then she went to the thing he had told her needed to be done, and she did it, exactly as he had explained. It took most of the morning. When it was done, she sat down and felt the particular combination of grief and gratitude that she carried from that night for the rest of her life. She told me that what she thought about most was the simplicity of it, that he had come back for one reason, to give her what she needed to continue, and had then returned to wherever the sea had taken him, without asking anything in return. In the early hours of the morning, she became aware that the chair at the table was empty. She had not seen him stand, had not heard any movement. He was simply no longer there. The table was as it had always been, the untouched cup of tea still where she had placed it hours before. She rose and went to the door and opened it. The village outside was quiet and dark, the sea carrying its rhythmic sound into the pre-dawn stillness. She stood in the doorway and said his name, quietly, once into the dark. No answer came. The sea continued, and she stood in her doorway and understood that whatever had come home that night had gone back to wherever it had come from. Oshoshina, she whispered into the dark. A thank you that had no adequate words in any language she knew, but that the sea, she hoped, would carry to wherever he was. Another whispered story from Japan, shared quietly here beside the kotatsu. The sea takes people, but sometimes, on certain nights, it sends them back briefly, for one final visit, to sit at a familiar table, to say the thing that was left unsaid, to give the person left behind what they need to continue, and then to return, to wherever the sea keeps the people it has taken. These visits are not frightening, they are not dramatic, they are simply love. Continuing past the point where most people believe love can continue. Crossing whatever distance separates the living from the dead, to sit in a kitchen in the early hours, with cold hands on a table, and a cup of tea that will never be drunk, and one thing that needed to be said, that could not wait any longer, that the sea finally allowed. If this story stayed with you, if the dark or the shadow feels a little closer tonight, you know where to find me. I am always here, beside the kotatsu, watching, waiting, and if you wish others to find their way here too, I would not object.